"You're not welcome at my family events anymore." That's what my sister screamed, right after I drove 9 hours in a snowstorm just to bring her a cake. "Hi, I'm Emily. I used to think being the quiet one meant keeping the peace. Turns out it just made it easier for them to erase me. But then my grandparents called, and everything changed." Have you ever felt like a ghost in your own family? I'd love to hear how you dealt with it. Let me take you back to where it all started. I drove 9 hours through a Wisconsin snowstorm with a custom cake and a quiet hope that maybe, for once, I wouldn't feel like an afterthought. The snow had turned to slush somewhere past Eau Claire, mixing with roadside grime into a gray paste that slapped against my windshield. I stopped just outside Madison for gas and changed in a BP restroom. My navy dress, picked for being photo appropriate but not too loud, wrinkled at the hem, and my boots still had road salt crusted at the soles. I checked the cake for the third time. The top layer, strawberry champagne with blush pink rosettes, was still intact under its clear cover. It had taken 3 weeks to get it custom made, Ashley's favorite flavor, the same she once said she'd want at her wedding. Even now, I clung to the thought that maybe this would mean something. My hands were shaking slightly as I removed my winter gloves. Not from the cold, but from the kind of tension that builds up over years and doesn't know where to go. I remembered Ashley's 8th birthday party. We'd both worn matching polka dot dresses, and Mom made a big deal about Ashley blowing out the candles in one perfect breath. Later, Ashley told me I clapped too loudly and made her look babyish. That was the first time I felt the need to shrink in order to belong. The house loomed like a scene from a bridal magazine. Tall hedges wrapped in white lights, valet staff in black peacoats, and snow shoveled into neat paths that gleamed under the spotlights. It didn't feel like an engagement party. It felt like a wedding already happening, one I had no role in. I walked in slowly, the cake heavy in my hands. A hostess in silver sequins blocked the door. "Delivery?" she asked, not looking up. "Number, I'm her sister," I said, forcing a smile. She blinked, uncertain, then waved me through. But the damage had already been done. That one word, delivery, lodged itself somewhere between my ribs. I tried to let it go, but my body had already registered it. My breath shortened. My hands felt foreign. A stupid part of me wanted to turn around and drive back through the storm, let the cake rot in the trunk. Inside, the scent of roses and roasted chestnuts filled the air. Guests held flutes of champagne and wore shades of cream and soft gold. Everything had been color coordinated, down to the hand towels in the restroom. Ashley found me near the dessert table. "Emily," she said, surprise tightening her voice. "I didn't think you'd actually make it." "I brought the cake," I said. "Strawberry champagne." Her eyes flicked to it. "Oh, that's sweet of you." She didn't touch it. Patricia, our mother, swooped in seconds later, hair perfectly pinned, pearls gleaming, and voice low. "Just don't make this about you, okay?" "I wasn't planning to." "Good." She smiled, the kind that masks everything else. The last time she and I had spoken one-on-one was over a year ago, an awkward lunch where she scrolled through her phone more than she made eye contact. When I brought up my move to Milwaukee, she'd said, "Well, it's not New York, but at least it's affordable." I tried to make myself small, sticking to corners, sipping ginger ale, pretending I was cold rather than hurt. I glanced at the place cards on each table. "No Emily," I asked a waiter. He checked the list twice. Nothing. I found a seat near the back, on a couch half covered with coats. My boots left damp marks on the hardwood. No one spoke to me. In the powder room, I wiped mascara from the corner of my eye and tried to press my bangs flat. A pair of guests walked in behind me, their voices louder than they realized. Wasn't she not invited? They said the list was full. Maybe she just showed up anyway. I stood still, breath caught. The air felt tight with perfume and politeness. I wanted to disappear, but also, somehow, to be seen. The powder room had pale walls and soft lighting, the kind meant to flatter. But under that flattering light, I could see how tired I looked, like I'd traveled across a blizzard just to be invisible. Back in the hallway, I caught sight of the slideshow. Photos of Ashley and James played across a screen. Vacations, brunches, childhood shots. One picture showed a birthday cake Ashley had in high school. I was the one who'd baked it. That part had been cropped. I leaned against the wall, trying to keep the frostbite in my chest from spreading. I didn't cry. Not then. Then, my phone buzzed. A group message had popped up. The preview showed only part of a sentence. Don't worry. She never checks this thread anyway. Curious, I opened it. It was the family planning thread. The one with Patricia, Ashley, Uncle Lee, and a few others. A thread I had never known existed. Yet somehow, someone had added me by mistake. Messages scrolled up like falling dominoes. Just tell her there's no more room. Emily's always so sensitive. Keep the vibe joyful. We don't need another Emily incident. I stared at the screen, the warmth of my fingertips pulling condensation from the phone's surface. It was like reading a diary written in other people's voices. About me. My vision tunneled. The hum of the party fell away. And somewhere between shame and clarity, something hardened. That's when I knew. They hadn't forgotten me. They had chosen to erase me. I always thought I was just in her shadow. Turns out, Ashley built the spotlight to burn me out of the frame. The message thread was still open on my phone. I stared at it in the hallway near the coat room, surrounded by silk scarves and expensive wool. I recognized everyone in the chat. Patricia, Aunt Marlene, Ashley's best friend Sierra. Names that once meant family now read like a guest list to a conspiracy. I scrolled until the screen blurred. We'll say the list was full. Emily's always too extra. She doesn't fit the look. That last line echoed. I didn't know who said it, but it looped like a bitter chorus. I wasn't part of the aesthetic, apparently. Maybe it was my flat shoes, my road-wrinkled dress, my inability to pretend none of this hurt. Every family's got a drama magnet, a voice hissed nearby. I froze. Two bridesmaids passed behind me, giggling. One held a mimosa like a wand. The other carried a tray of cookies shaped like engagement rings. They didn't see me behind the half-open closet door. She literally brought a cake, the first one whispered. That's not a cry for attention? Bet you $10 it ends up in her car untouched. I waited until their heels clacked away, then exhaled. The air near the coats was heavy with perfume, Chanel maybe, or something more boutique. My coat, the one I'd worn since grad school, hung damp and sad between a puffer jacket and a cashmere wrap. I needed a moment, just a moment. I followed a hallway that curved away from the party, dimmer lights, muted laughter behind doors. That's when I found the tray. Gilded, perched on a pedestal table with tiny boxes labeled in calligraphy, bridal party gifts. Ashley had always loved little details, monogrammed candles, silk scrunchies, custom hairpins. Each box bore a name: Sierra, Lauren, Mom, even Aunt Marlene. Nothing for me. I stood there too long, my fingers almost touching a box that wasn't mine. Then a door opened down the hall. Voices spilled out, bright, amused. I swear, Ashley said. She drove all that way like some Lifetime movie martyr. Laughter. Sierra chimed in. Imagine if she'd crashed. At least we'd get silence and sympathy. Ashley laughed harder. God, Sierra. But there was no shock in her voice, only delight. I didn't move. My heels were soundless on the carpet, and I stood just out of sight. I thought of the drive again. Whiteouts, semis, cold coffee clutched with numb fingers. I had made that journey for this. For her. Their voices softened. then drifted farther. I didn't follow. I turned back and wandered, each step lighter with anger and heavier with knowing. I passed a mirror and didn't recognize myself. Not because I looked different, but because I suddenly saw the version of me they talked about. Too much, too loud, too inconvenient. I pushed open a restroom door and stepped into soft lighting and lavender hand soap. A woman I didn't know applied lipstick at the counter, glanced at me, and left. The stall door closed behind me with a soft click. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just walked until I found a bathroom stall, locked it, and sat in silence. But silence wasn't peace anymore. The tile beneath me was cool and clean, sterile in a way that mocked the chaos inside me. I stared at my boots, scuffed at the toe, salt stains creeping up the edges. They looked like they'd walked through war. In a way, maybe they had. A knock on the stall door startled me. "You okay?" a voice asked. It was warm, older, maybe one of the catering staff. "Yes, just catching my breath," I managed. She paused. "Don't stay too long in your own head. It gets lonely in there." I didn't reply, but I held on to her words like a thread in a storm. Something about her voice reminded me of Mrs. Daly, our neighbor when we were kids. The one who made sugar cookies every Thursday and always gave Ashley 2 instead of 1. Back then, Ashley used to split hers with me sometimes. Other times she'd eat both and say, "Sorry, Em, you were too slow." And I'd laugh, because at 7, I still believed being last didn't mean being least. I leaned back against the stall wall and closed my eyes. Maybe this was always coming. Maybe some people aren't exiled so much as slowly faded out, like pictures left in sunlight. You don't notice what's missing until one day, all that's left is the outline. A ringtone chimed in my coat pocket. I pulled it out. Voicemail from Dad. My stomach flipped. He hadn't been at the party either, but he'd probably heard about the drive. His message was short. "Hey kiddo, call me when you can. Just want to know you made it okay." That was it. Simple, neutral. No mention of Ashley or the party or why my name hadn't been on the list. I didn't call back. I flushed the toilet out of reflex and washed my hands, though I hadn't done anything that required cleansing. Still, it felt necessary. The woman was gone when I stepped out. The mirror greeted me with a version of myself I barely tolerated. Cheeks blotchy, eyes tired, mouth drawn tight like a string about to snap. I dabbed on some lip balm and tucked my hair behind one ear. "You made it here," I whispered. "Don't let them pretend you don't exist." And with that, I stepped back into the hallway. The laughter from the party had swelled again. More champagne, more toasts, more curated joy. I wasn't ready to face it, but I wasn't going to hide anymore either. If you want to know where you stand with your family, check where they sit you. In my case, they didn't. The dining room looked like something out of a wedding catalog. Floor-to-ceiling windows, ivory linens, and strings of fairy lights coiled around faux cherry blossom branches. Each table bore the name of a wine varietal in looping gold calligraphy: Merlot, Chardonnay, Syrah. It was elegant, intentional, curated. I walked slowly along the outer edge, scanning place cards. Not under M, not under E. I even checked for a misspelling. Emily, Emily, M. Nothing. At the far end, near a side table stacked with cheese cubes and sugared pecans, there was a single seat open. I moved toward it, careful not to brush against the floral centerpieces perched like fragile trophies. A woman in a headset and flats stepped in front of me. "Sorry," she said without looking up. "That's reserved for the DJ's assistant." I stepped back. "Oh, of course." I stood there holding a glass of water with both hands. Not sipping. Just holding. The condensation slicked my palms and I welcomed it. At least it was real. "Where are you sitting?" a voice behind me asked. I turned to see one of the older guests. I think her name was Donna, or maybe Diane. She wore a deep purple wrap and held a plate of deviled eggs like they were currency. "Oh, I haven't found my card yet," I lied. She nodded sympathetically. "These events are chaotic, aren't they? I almost got seated next to the restrooms." She moved on with a chuckle, unaware she'd just offered me the best option I could hope for. I lingered near the dessert bar, watching servers light candles and straighten napkins. The buzz of small talk and clinking cutlery surrounded me like static. Every now and then I caught a word or phrase. "She just showed up. Didn't even RSVP. Awkward, right?" My name wasn't in their mouths, but I was the center of their implication. A projector flickered to life near the head table. Ashley's childhood photos began to play across a white screen. Her in footy pajamas. She is in ballet class. Her with Mom and Sierra at a pumpkin patch. I waited for one of them. One of us. None came. There were slides of her college dorm room, her graduation, her and James posing in national parks. Then came a burst of images labeled family moments, each one carefully chosen to exclude me. Group photos cropped just so. Reunions I didn't attend, or hadn't been told about. I recognized the dress Mom wore to a dinner I thought was canceled. It hadn't been. I turned away and walked toward the hallway again. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even deliberate. My feet moved because my chest felt too tight to stay. Inside the bathroom, I chose the same stall. Familiarity was its own kind of comfort. I sat, not to hide, but to breathe. The tears didn't come like they did in movies. No gasps, no trembling sobs. Just one after another, quiet as snowfall. It hit me then, not all at once, but like light rising behind a curtain. This wasn't the first time I'd been edited out. It was just the first time I'd seen the seams. Birthdays where I wasn't in the Facebook album. Stories told at Thanksgiving where my name never came up. Ashley calls herself an only child in spirit at a bridal brunch. I had spent years explaining those things away. Busy schedules, miscommunications, a sister's poor memory. But this was curation. I stayed in the stall a few minutes more until I heard the buzz of applause from the reception room. A toast, probably. I didn't need to hear it to know I wasn't part of it. I stood, adjusted my coat, and wiped under my eyes with a tissue I found folded in my coat pocket. It smelled faintly of cinnamon, leftover from a scented lotion I used to wear in college. Back when Ashley and I shared that apartment for 6 confusing months. We'd had matching mugs then. One said, "World's okayest sister." The other, "Not even close." I always thought we were joking. Back in the hallway, I passed a table with a small floral arrangement and a guest book. Most pages were filled with looping messages. "So happy for you too. Wishing you a lifetime of love." I flipped to the first page out of curiosity. There, in bold cursive, was a quote Ashley must have picked. "Some people make your laugh louder, your smile brighter, and your life better." I had laughed with her once. I smiled beside her. But now, her life seemed engineered to be brighter without me in it. A young couple approached and glanced at the book. "Isn't this sweet?" the woman said, flipping past my idle hand. I took a pen and wrote in the corner, "Wishing you honesty and kindness." That was all. Before I left the table, I caught sight of a tray with printed itineraries. Ashley had planned every 15 minutes. Introductions, games, dancing, dessert, photo booth. The name Emily wasn't anywhere on it. I folded one copy and tucked it into my purse. Maybe someday I'd want proof that I wasn't just imagining all this. As I returned to the party's periphery, the DJ cued a familiar, upbeat tune. Guests cheered as Ashley and James were called to the center for a dance game. Her laugh echoed louder than the music. And me? I slipped into a corner booth near the bar. A server brought over a glass of water without me asking. I must have looked like I needed it. Want anything stronger? He asked gently. I smiled. No, thank you. I need to remember this. He gave me a small nod before stepping away. I held the glass in both hands again, like a small anchor. And that's when I knew. I hadn't been forgotten. I'd been erased. Have you ever realized you weren't forgotten? You were intentionally erased? That quiet sting of being cropped out of your own story. If you've ever felt like that, leave a comment number 7 below. Let's see where this goes. I didn't throw the cake. I didn't scream. I just left it. Still perfect. Still untouched. Just like me. The motel room smelled faintly of bleach and burnt coffee, like it was trying too hard to be clean. I'd checked in after the party with nothing but my overnight bag and the same coat I'd worn in the snow. The cake box was still in the trunk, untouched, pristine. Just like me. I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed, letting the stillness press into me. The TV murmured something about a local plumbing scandal, but I wasn't really listening. My phone buzzed on the dresser, screen lighting up with message after message. Ashley. Was that really necessary? Mom. You embarrassed her. Cousin Trish. It was her night. Why did you even come? Not one asked if I was okay. I didn't reply. I just turned off the notifications and stared at the ceiling. The heater rattled to life in the corner, the only thing making noise besides my thoughts. I thought about how long it took to choose that cake. Strawberry champagne, Ashley's favorite, with tiny candied roses and hand-piped buttercream pearls. I'd even driven 3 hours out of my way to pick it up from a bakery she once raved about. For nothing. I opened Instagram and posted a photo I'd taken earlier, just the cake, sitting in the center of a linen-covered table still in its clear case. My caption was simple. Some things you do out of love. Some things teach you who deserves it. I didn't care how it landed. I wasn't looking for sympathy. I was naming the truth out loud. My folder, the one labeled Truth, had been building for months. Screenshots, messages, photos, receipts. It was the one habit I picked up from a friend in law school who said, always keep the paper trail, especially when you're the only one who remembers what happened. I found the cake order confirmation, the deposit receipt, the final payment. Then I opened my email and typed, subject, cake invoice. 2. Patricia Avery, Ashley Avery body. Attached is the receipt for the cake you didn't touch. No sign-off, no guilt. Just facts. I hit send. For a moment I sat frozen, waiting for the rush of shame to rise, but it didn't come. Instead, I felt light, hollow, maybe, but also clear. Have you ever stood your ground? Not with rage, but with quiet truth? That strange relief when guilt finally lets go. If you've ever reclaimed your voice like that, drop a comment number 9 below. Now, let's see what happens next. Grandma Elaine used to say, when people show you who they are, you don't owe them the benefit of the doubt twice. I remembered that on Thanksgiving I tried to bake that exact cake. I was 15, and the kitchen smelled like scorched sugar and too much ambition. The top had sunk in the middle, and the frosting curdled. Ashley had laughed so hard she cried, calling it candle wax. But Grandma scraped the edges and said, rustic. She'd eaten 2 slices. That memory carried me through the night. Later, as I lay on the bed with the lamp turned low, I imagined Grandma sitting beside me. Her familiar voice filled the room. Not as a ghost, but as a guide. You're not broken, Em, I imagined her saying. You're just finally tired of being rearranged for other people's comfort. I nodded quietly. I don't want to fight. I just want to stop being invisible. You're not invisible. Not to me. I turned over, curling my knees to my chest. For the first time in a long while, I let my shoulders fall. The next morning, I walked to Ruby's Junction, a diner just off the main road. The snow had turned to slush, and the pavement hissed beneath my boots. Inside, it smelled like maple syrup and overcooked eggs. A woman about my mother's age sat 2 booths over, folding paper napkins into triangles. Her husband, presumably, was reading aloud from the local newspaper, something about the high school basketball team making it to regionals. She looked at him and said, "You still read me the sports page like it's poetry?" And they both laughed. There was something about that moment, so ordinary, so intact. It made my chest tighten. I used to think families naturally grew like that. Now I know better. Some are pruned, some are shaped, and some are simply cut down. The waitress came over and refilled my mug. "Are you doing okay today, sweetheart?" she asked. I blinked. Yeah, thanks. No one had asked me that in weeks, maybe months. I stirred my 3rd cup of coffee, though it had long gone cold. In the corner of the diner was a pinboard filled with local flyers: Missing Cat, Jazz Night, Try Our Winter Chili. There was also a printed poem, yellowing at the edges. "We don't always bloom where you're planted, but we still get to choose which way we grow." I read it twice, then once more, out loud in my head. Back in the motel, I took a moment to lay out the few things I had brought: book, charger, a scarf still dusted with sugar. I looked at the cake box again. Still intact, still beautiful. A knock would have startled me, but it was just the heater kicking in again. Still, I glanced at the door. Nothing. The silence wasn't as heavy now. It was almost gentle, like the hush before snowfall. I sat down and opened the message from Elaine. Just her name. Just the request. I typed, then paused. I thought of her voice on the phone, the way she once hummed old hymns while shelling pecans for pie. I remembered how she used to hold my wrist when she sensed I was about to cry. Not my hand, just my wrist. Like she was trying to anchor me. I tapped the green call button. It rang once, then twice, and then. "You've been quiet too long," Grandma said. "Let's change that." Her voice floated through the speakerphone, warm and slow, like syrup poured over something just out of the oven. I was still sitting on the edge of the motel bed, legs tucked under a throw blanket that smelled faintly of bleach and polyester. The morning light pressed through the sheer curtains, not strong enough to bring warmth, only enough to illuminate the cold. "I wasn't sure you'd answer," Grandma continued. No judgment in her tone, just history. "I almost didn't," I admitted. There was a pause, then a rustle, like the sound of her cardigan sleeve brushing against the receiver. "You sound tired, Em." "I am." The heater coughed in the corner. I stared at the motel's faded wallpaper, the kind with floral borders that tried to pretend things hadn't changed in 30 years. In some ways, they hadn't. But in others, everything had split at the seams. "Did you make it to the party?" she asked gently. I let out something between a laugh and a sigh. "I made it. Wasn't sure I was supposed to." Another pause. This time, longer. "I figured," she said. "I knew something wasn't right. I stopped by your mother's last week. Every photo in the hallway had Ashley's face in it. None of yours. Not even the ones I took of you in that red corduroy dress you loved." I swallowed. Hard. "She took them down?" I asked. "She edited you out," Grandma said, with a precision that cut more than any shout could have. "And I don't think it was an accident." There was a sound in the background, Grandpa Walter's cough. Then his low voice, barely audible. "Tell her we miss her." Grandma didn't repeat it. She didn't need to. I heard him clearly. My throat tightened. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said quietly. I just want to stop feeling like I don't exist." You don't ruin what's already broken, Grandma replied. You name it. That's the first step to fixing anything. The line hummed. Somewhere, I imagined she was sitting in the kitchen, that same table with its knotty pine surface scarred by decades of hot pots and roller pins. Maybe jazz was playing from the radio tucked under the cabinet, the way it used to when I was a kid. I made Ashley's cake, I said. The same strawberry champagne one from Thanksgiving. The one you liked. She didn't even slice it, did she? No, I whispered. Grandma made a sound, part disapproval, part knowing. Tell me everything, she said. And so I did. I told her about the group text, the whispers, the gift table with my name missing, the slideshow where I had been deleted from our family's story. I told her about hiding in the bathroom stall, not crying, just listening to the sound of my own breath bounce off the tile. And then, finally, I told her what I had heard in the service hallway. Ashley's voice, Sierra's laugh, the line that played again and again in my mind like a broken music box. Imagine if she'd crashed. Grandma didn't interrupt. Not once. She listened the way only someone who's been dismissed too many times can, fierce in her stillness. I recorded it, I said, almost as an afterthought. Their voices. She exhaled. Good. I hesitated. You don't think it's petty? No, she said firmly. I think it's evidence. Her words sat with me, heavy and grounding. There's brunch on Sunday, she added after a pause. At our house. Your mother won't be there. Ashley's too busy being celebrated, so you've got the floor. What do I even say? I asked. You don't have to say much. Just be there. Sometimes presence is the loudest truth. The silence stretched again, but it wasn't uncomfortable this time. I don't want a war, I said finally. Then don't bring one, she replied. Just bring yourself. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Before she hung up, she added one last thing. They wrote the script. Now you flip the page. I sat with the phone in my hand long after the call ended, its screen gone dark. Outside, the snow was melting into slush. A gray sky pressed low over Madison, but I could see a thin break in the clouds, just enough light to outline the roof of the diner across the parking lot. I wasn't healed. Not yet. But I was heard. And maybe, for now, that was enough. I closed the notebook, but my thoughts kept writing themselves. What if I had never driven up through the storm? Would they have mentioned me at all? Would anyone have noticed my absence, or would it have simply made the guest list easier to coordinate? The truth hit me like a dull thud. They didn't need me there, because they had already rehearsed the version of the story without me. And maybe that was what hurt the most. Not the omission itself, but how seamless it all felt. Like I was never a chapter, just a footnote they'd finally agreed to cut. I got up and walked to the window. Outside, a young boy in a red parka trudged beside his mother, dragging a stick through the slush like he was drawing lines only he could understand. I wondered when I had stopped doing that, drawing my own path. When I started asking for space in stories that were never meant to include me. A part of me still wanted to delete that audio file, to stay the quiet one, the one who doesn't make drama. But Grandma's words rang again. You don't ruin what's already broken, you name it. And I realized, maybe my silence wasn't grace. Maybe it was just convenient. For them. Back in my room, I placed the pie box on top of the cake container. 2 gifts, both made from care, both are mostly ignored, but this time, I wouldn't be. She raised her glass and said, Family over ego. I stood up and said, Let's test that. Aunt Marlene's living room smelled like cinnamon and orange peels, like every Sunday brunch I remembered growing up. But the air today was heavier. Everyone wore cream-colored sweaters like they'd coordinated a commercial for reconciliation. The long dining table gleamed under low chandeliers, and mimosa flutes clinked too politely to be sincere. Ashley stood, holding her glass aloft with that practiced smile, the one she used in engagement photos and when reporters asked about her vision board. "This week reminded me that love wins when we let go of pride," she said. A few chuckles, a few nods, but something in her voice. It wasn't just polished, it was pointed. I stood, not abruptly, not to cause a scene. I just rose, calmly, and said, "And yet, pride was what nearly got me killed driving 9 hours through a snowstorm to a party where I wasn't wanted." The room froze. The only sound was the quiet buzz of the heater vent and the faint click of Grandma's fork settling gently onto her plate. Ashley blinked, the smile cracking just a little. "Emily, maybe this isn't the—" "No," I said. "Maybe this is the only time." I pulled my phone from my coat pocket, opened the audio file, and hit play. Sierra's voice came through, giggling. Imagine if she'd crashed. At least we'd get silence and sympathy. "Ashley, stop. That's horrible. But it's true." The room didn't breathe. Mom stared down at her coffee like it might offer her a better script. James's expression shifted. First confusion, then something colder. Sierra looked everywhere but at me. I said nothing as the recording ended. I didn't need to. "You didn't forget me," I said quietly. "You erased me." It wasn't a confrontation. It was a correction. I let the silence stretch. Let them sit with it. Like I had sat with the feeling of being invisible for years. Ashley's voice came sharp, defensive. "You always make everything about you." I didn't flinch. "You needed a villain. I stopped auditioning." It wasn't theatrical. It wasn't loud. It was true. And that made it heavier than any scream. There was a pause, long and aching. Then Grandma set her cloth napkin on the table and stood. Her gaze swept slowly around the room before it landed on me. "You didn't just clear your name," she said, voice even. "You rewrote the ending." She walked toward me and took my hand. Just that. No speeches, no declarations, just presence. The kind I had hungered for in all those empty chairs and blank photo slides. I didn't say goodbye to anyone else. I just left. The diner was 3 blocks away, the one with chipped booths and a waitress who wore her name tag like a badge of honor. Carol. She saw me walk in, raised a hand without needing to ask. "Warm pie, cinnamon and honey?" I smiled. "For real this time." "Yes, please." As I sat there, watching the snow melt into gray slush outside, I realized something. Families don't always heal together. Sometimes healing starts when you finally speak up, whether or not anyone claps at the end. The pie arrived. Steam rose from the crust like an exhale. I took a bite. Sweet. Sharp. Just like the truth. Carol topped off my coffee and slid into the booth across from me for a second. "You always looked tired the first few times you came in, but today, you look different." "Lighter," I said. She nodded like she understood. "More like yourself." I looked down at my hands, still slightly trembling. "I thought speaking up would burn everything down," I admitted. "But it didn't," Carol said. "You just let the smoke out." I sat in silence for a while longer, watching the sidewalk, the passing cars, the light finally shifting from gray to something almost golden. And in that moment, I let myself remember something I hadn't in years. The first time I ever read a poem out loud, it was for Grandpa Walter. I was 10, and my voice cracked halfway through. He didn't laugh. He just said, "You've got more courage in one breath than some people do in a lifetime." I hadn't believed him then, but today, maybe I did. Outside the diner window, a young girl in a purple coat ran ahead of her father, giggling as she slipped on the slush. He caught her by the elbow and they both laughed. I watched them, remembering a birthday party when I was maybe 11. Ashley's birthday, not mine. I had made her a card by hand, tiny drawings on every corner, and tucked a $5 bill inside from my piggy bank. She'd opened it, barely glanced at the front, then left it under a stack of presents from her friends. Later, I found it on the kitchen floor. Smudged, forgotten. That was the day I started making myself smaller, quieter, easier to forget. But today, I stood. The bell above the diner door jingled. A couple walked in, stamping snow from their boots, and the smell of cold and cologne mingled with the scent of cinnamon. Carol brought the check and set it down without a word. I caught her eye. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing me." She smiled. "About time someone did." As I reached for my wallet, I remembered something else. Grandma once told me, when truth walks in, lies tend to leave quietly out the back. She was right. At that brunch table, no one screamed. No one had defended Ashley. Not even Ashley. I stepped out into the chill, pulling my scarf higher. The sun was trying to break through the clouds now, not quite succeeding, but trying. I walked past a bookstore with a dusty window display and paused to look in. There was a sign that read, "Stories change everything, especially the ones we tell about ourselves." I pulled out my phone, opened a new note, and typed, "I am not what they edited out. I am what remains." I hit save. Please do not post. Not yet, but soon. Back at the motel, I packed slowly. Each item folded felt like shedding another version of who I used to be. I left the cake box behind in the trash, lid open, because the closure didn't need to be clean. It just needed to be chosen. Before I left, I sent Grandma a message. "Thank you for letting me speak." She replied instantly, "You always could. You just needed someone to listen." As I merged onto the highway heading home, I didn't look back. Because this time, I wasn't returning from silence. I was returning from the truth. Even in a room full of people, you can feel like a shadow, unnoticed, uninvited. But in the quiet, I found something louder than their approval, my own voice. Not to fight, just to be seen. Sometimes families don't break with shouting, they break in silence, when love becomes conditional and presence becomes a performance. But healing begins when just one person dares to speak the truth with grace. If you've ever felt invisible among the people who were supposed to know you best, remember, you don't need permission to take up space. Silence doesn't have to be surrendered. It can be the first page of a new story. If this story spoke to you, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. We're here to listen. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, feel free to follow the channel. Thank you for staying with me to the end. Take care, and I hope to see you again in the next story.